You're listening to The Upland Rookie, a podcast presented by Upland Brits. Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of the Upland Rookie Podcast, presented by Upland Brits. Also brought to you by Gunner Kennels. I've personally used and tested every major kennel brand on the market today. After months of hands-on experience, Gunner is the only kennel I'll use for my favorite bird dogs. Man's best friend deserves man's best kennel. That's a Gunner kennel. Also brought to you by Trinity Bretons. For over 32 years, Trinity Bretons has worked to bring you the best bred Epinal Bretons in the country. Check them out at trinitybretons.com. Also brought to you by Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. Inukshuk's dense formulations ensure that your pup in training and your seasoned bird dog get what they need to succeed in the field. Inukshuk works hard so your dogs can work harder. Also brought to you by Pointer Freaking Traditions, baby. They have their brand new vintage collar, camo collar out now. You're going to want to check them out and check out that brand new release over at pointertraditions.com. Hey, also use promo code ROOKIE15 when you're checking out at Pointer Traditions. It's going to save you 15% off your entire order at pointertraditions.com. So make sure you use that code when you shop. And also brought to you by Onyx Hunt. Use promo code TUR20 for 20% off your Onyx subscription. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 43 of the Upland Rookie Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast through Spotify or Apple Podcasts, making sure you're going to get all the most up-to-date, most recent episodes in your feed when they drop. So just kind of a PSA. Hey guys, 3 things I wanted to update you on. One being the Nastra trial I ran with Gage a couple weeks back. We qualified for the regional championship, and sadly to say, we did not make it past round 1. So they take day 1, which is Saturday. They take I think it was 24 or 26 dogs total that were running. They whittle that down. You get 1 run, and they whittle that down, I think, to the top 8 or top 10. Don't quote me on these numbers. And then they'll bring those dogs back for day 2. Then they take the top, let's say top 8. Then they whittle that down to top 2. And then they have the top 2 dogs have a 1-hour runoff, 10 birds out in the field, 1 hour. Dogs go, and I believe Alan won. He has a really nice short hair, so here in the Rocky Mountain region. So congrats, Alan, if you're listening to this. I'm not sure if you are, but Alan Hyman, he's a great dude, has some great short hairs, and had a hell of a run. So way to go. Really fun event. Conditions were tough. Conditions were really, really tough that weekend. Even into Sunday, it was hot and dry. Our run on Saturday, the wind was on and off all day. It was it was kind of shit. Honestly, the wind was kind of shit. So it made it tough. Made it tough for the dogs. A lot of people were coming up either birdless, 1 bird, maybe 2 bird finds on their runs. And so regardless, a ton of fun, gained some more experience, which is always good. But yeah, it definitely made for a tough run. We went birdless in our run, and I think my bracemate, he got 1 right off the bat. There's a bird walking across the road, and his dog stopped, got the find, and so all good. It was a good way to wrap up the season. Not how I would have hoped, but again, great trial season. I guess my first real trial season, and had a blast doing it. So all good there. And so we got some time off until my next trial won't be until, I think we're doing an August one here in the Rocky Mountain region, and then a couple more in the fall. So I might be hit or miss. Again, my fall plans, I'm trying to think about hunting plans already, and we got a baby coming in September, and so I am just looking at the calendar, trying to be realistic of when I'm going to get out, and then looking at some plans for the fall. So kind of overwhelming right now, to be honest. You got, stupid gas prices right now are crazy, like travel plans, baby coming, like all this stuff in the fall right now. I'm just like super stressed out right now, trying to navigate my fall and see what that's going to look like. So I will get it done. I will find time to get out there, maybe an early September hunt before baby. Makes my wife a little nervous, but I'm like, honey, I'm only 2 hours away, 2.5, maybe 3. Don't tell her 4. Anyways, so it's that time of year. Starting to look at fall plans. I know it's only May, end of May, but I'm getting excited for fall. Trial season was fantastic. I loved getting into the Nastra, trying the AKC trial, all that stuff. But now I'm kind of like, all right, I just want to get back out chasing some wild birds. So I'm getting that itch. I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But hey, 2 other things I wanted to mention to you guys before we jump into episode 43. First off, super excited. Y'all know I have been a Final Rise, I don't even know what you want to call it. I love my Final Rise vest, and been talking with Matt Davis for several years, back when he launched this company. And recently we started talking, and Matt and Final Rise have agreed to come on as the newest podcast sponsor. Yes. So Final Rise, newest sponsor of the Upland Rookie podcast, and super blessed to have Matt's support and friendship, really. Matt and I talk quite a bit, and just I've been excited, and just it's been fun to watch his story unfold as he started this company about 3 years ago, and just to see the work and the grind and the effort that he's put in to make this company what it is today and offer the quality of products that he is. It's just a company that I knew from the beginning that I would, if I ever had the opportunity to partner with, I would love to do that. And so it was a no-brainer decision for me. And I love what he's doing over there. I love the gear that he's making, the way he's doing business. It's made, he's making it right here in the USA. It's quality gear. And if you're looking for an Upland vest right now, he's got a sale going on right now. I know, a sale. Who doesn't love to save some money? So right now, through June 5th, 2022, he's doing one sale a year, and this is the sale. So he's got $30 off any vest system. That's any vest system. So you're going to save $30 off the Legacy, the Summit, or even the Sidekick, the brand new Sidekick vest. And so take a look over there. You're going to save $30. I think like the Summit vest, which is the one I have, it's the original one. Has all the modularity and the customization you can do with moving pockets and bottle holders and all that stuff. That's my personal favorite. I have not tried the Legacy. I might in the future if I want to try something a little more minimal. I just really love the Summit vest. And so, for example, the Summit vest system, you can get that whole vest for $270 after the sale. So $270 for a Summit vest is freaking awesome. So promo code is Final Rise. That's it. Final Rise, all caps. Use that at checkout in your promo code, little box section, and save some money on a vest. Again, you can use that towards the new Legacy or the Sidekick as well. So take advantage of that right now if you are in the market for a new vest, maybe something you've wanted to try it for a while. Now's going to be a really good time to give that a try and save a little money as well. So anyways, all that to say, you'll hear more stuff from Final Rise through the podcast. But again, Matt, thank you so much. It's been a blast to work with you already, and really excited for this partnership going forward. So anyways, last thing I want to mention, you guys probably saw on social media, have a giveaway happening right now. No purchase necessary with Pointer Tradition. So we're giving away a spring training bundle. Yes, a spring training bundle, if I can talk today. So with Pointer Traditions and I, they've been a sponsor of the podcast for several months, and David over there has offered up some great gear as a spring giveaway. We're doing a center ring collar, a check cord, a short little training tab, which actually comes in handy for quite a bit, and as well as a leash. And so you're going to win 4 items, and it's really, really simple to enter. Just go find a post. It's on Pointer Traditions Instagram page and Upland Brits Instagram page. So find the giveaway post there. There's simple instructions on how to enter this giveaway. Again, no purchase necessary. It's just a giveaway. A fun little bonus is whoever wins this giveaway, I will reach out to them, let them know they've won. And we'll have a conversation. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, you will have an open invitation to come be a guest on the podcast. Yes, on the Upland Rookie podcast. I'm a little nervous about this because I don't know who's going to win, but we're going to give it a shot. So again, kind of an added little thing. We'll get to know you, your story about your dogs, why you love upland hunting. Like we'll make it fun, and I'm excited to get to know whoever wins a little bit more. Again, for you, it is optional. If you are a super introverted person and you do not want to be on a podcast, we're not going to force you to be on the podcast. But just know it'll be an open invitation for whoever wins to come on the show and sit down and do a little interview. So just know that's an added little bonus of the giveaway as well. And so that's running through May 29th. So Sunday, May 29th, it's going to close. So get your entries in now and share it on social media for some bonus entries. And we'll announce the winner on Memorial Day. So got some exciting stuff there. Great giveaway from Pointer Traditions. Again, if you're in the market for some great dog collars, bird straps, leashes, check cords, all that kind of stuff, give Pointer Traditions a look. Promo code Rookie15, and it's going to save you a little money over with Pointer Traditions. So I think that's all I got for right now. I want to get into I'm really excited for this episode. I've wanted to interview this guest for a long time, and yeah, it's Nick Larson from the Birdshot podcast. Nick, I think I told him this a little bit in the interview, but I started listening to him right when he dropped his podcast. That was the first Upland podcast I ever listened to, and I just picked up my first bird dog gauge. And so I was driving out to Jeff's house and training and trying to get gauge on birds and trying to figure this whole thing out. And through Nick's podcast and stories and just the information, I was just consuming this information. And then it led me to Ronnie Bame's podcast, the Honey Dog podcast, and Travis Warren's the Upchucker podcast. They were all kind of out at that time. I know Ron's was out, a lot earlier, but it opened my eyes to this whole world of podcasts, and I was just devouring all this information as quick as I could. And so Nick and I, we it's kind of fun. We talk about the world of podcasting and what that looks like and how it's developed over the years and why it's grown so popular. And so, really fun episode. Nick, thanks for sitting down with me and doing this show. You've kind of been a hero of mine, and thank you for what you've been doing and inspiring me to get out there, start this podcast, and I know you've been able to help and inspire a lot of others. So, hey, here's episode 43 with Nick Larson from the Birdshot podcast. I actually want to start off. Did you watch the Avs game last night?
I did not watch the Avs game last night. I got to be honest. Since the Wild totally flamed out of the playoffs, as into the hockey season as I've kind of had to take a little bit of a break. I mean, my heart was pretty broken. A lot of Wild fans were pretty upset by that. And it's, they were playing the Blues, who are obviously a good team, who the Avs have been playing for the last few games. Somebody's got to lose, right? It's just the fashion that the Wild lost in after the regular season they had. It was such a screeching halt to the season. So I've been taking some time to recover and a little bit. Exactly. And focus on some other things. And you were so gracious in the loss after our little wager. You helped me through that one a little bit.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know what heartbreak feels like, and I know the pain you must have been going through. I get it, man.
Yeah. Well, you're just like, you were in Chicago and you got Stanley Cup champions, and then you go to Colorado, and now you got the President's Cup. I mean, you guys are just, you're crazy.
I know. We're feeling it. The poor Hawks right now. I feel bad for them. They're in a rebuild season. They're in a rebuild. No doubt. So we'll get there. But yeah, man, come on. I mean, once you recover, you got to jump back in. This is the time of year to watch some hockey. It's lights out right now. It's getting good.
It is cool. Like, man, I'm so impressed at how how many of the first round series went to 7 games. And awesome. I just checked the other day, like how many Stevens are or series are just deadlocked right now. Yeah. This is quite a Stanley Cup playoff.
The Battle of Alberta right now. So the Flames and Oilers, that is a fun series right now.
Yeah.
That is just going, high scoring games. McDavid's doing his thing. Like it's pretty awesome to watch.
Yeah. You love hockey. This is a good time of year.
It is. It's the best time of year. I got my son's after this, my son's practice, hockey practice. And then right after that, we're coming back for the Avs game. So
how old is your son?
The one who's the oldest one in hockey right now, he's just turned 8. And we have an 8 and a 5-year-old in hockey right now.
So what level is that? Like, how do they do it out there?
So he's still in the U8 program.
U8,
So basically per USA Hockey, so within U8, there's 3 levels. There's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So he's going into this fall will be his advanced year. And then after that, it gets into like U10 squirts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. My son just turned 4 in the beginning of April. So we hit skates for the first time. That's maybe even a little late for Minnesotans. He was 3 years old. His first time on
I'm surprised he wasn't like 1 and you put him out there.
Yeah. I was lagging a little bit there, but we'll see. He's I've hinted around at the hockey thing, and we've got mini sticks and the nets in the basement, and they're a casual interest, but I gotta say he's probably more interested in grouse than he is hockey.
Hey, that's not bad either.
Exactly.
That is not you got 2 good options right there.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's so fun, man. So fun. Well, all right, let's back up a little bit. Nick, tell us a little bit about who you are and put us on a map. Where are you talking to us from?
Yeah, so I am in the great state of Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, right on the tip of Lake Superior. This is where I was born here, grew up here, and aside from a quick stint in the Twin Cities area after college, I lived down there for a handful of years. I've lived in Duluth my whole life, and naturally have been a lover of the outdoors, fishing and hunting for a long time, going way back. I've had lots of opportunities to get into that stuff over the years. And so that's where I live. I host a upland hunting podcast, like you will, as some of your listeners may know, the Birdshot podcast. I have done that since 2017. It was formerly the Project Upland podcast. And then late last year, switched over to the Birdshot podcast as I had kind of moved on and took over the podcast on my own. And then in conjunction with that, I work for Upland Gun Company, selling shotguns to lots of bird hunters. So those are the 2 things that keep me busy most days, beyond my family and my bird dogs. And that's where I live, and happy to be on the Upland Rookie podcast chatting with you, Will.
Well, Nick, I am so thrilled to have you on. I know we've talked quite a bit over the years, but I picked up my first bird dog in 2017. And that was, I think, when did you start the podcast back then? Do you remember?
September 2017, I think was episode number 1. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember, so we picked our dog up in October that year. And I remember I crushed the first several episodes, and I was waiting week to week for them to come out. And it was a good time, man. It was fun. We had a new bird dog puppy, and I was just exploring all these upland podcasts that I had no idea were a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got turned on to them. And it was fun. You made the drives to training sessions and all that a lot easier. So I'm honored to have you on.
Well, appreciate that. It's always fun to hear from folks that listen to the show, have listened to the show, and dating back to, those early years. And obviously the podcast space has developed a lot, and now there's more and more upland podcasts. And it's been cool to see how it's all developed, and have people like you come into the space and start sharing your adventures and conversations with all of us.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I want to talk about podcasting a little bit here. And but first, I gotta admit, when I first was listening to your podcast back then, I thought you were from Wisconsin for years. Not gonna lie. Well, I was like, oh, he lives in Wisconsin. That's not that far from me. And then like, I don't know, it was like a year later. I was like, wait, he's in Minnesota?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Duluth Superior, AKA the Twin Ports. We have the Twin Cities in Minnesota, which is Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's in Minnesota. This area is commonly referred to as the Twin Ports, Duluth, Minnesota, Superior, Wisconsin. Okay. So we are right on the tip of Lake Superior. We're right on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin.
So I'm not that wrong.
No, you're close. And my family does have a cabin in Wisconsin, and I hunt a lot in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Okay. So I feel so much better actually now.
Yeah, that lends itself to probably your confusion.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, how's the podcast going, man? How's the Birdshot podcast? I know you just you're doing your own thing now pretty recently, right? In the last 6 months or so. How's everything going right now?
Oh, it's going really well. It's going really well. You know, the format of the show hasn't really changed since it became the Birdshot podcast. This was just something that was kind of in the works, and sort of my work and career and how all this stuff has come together. And it's been really awesome to switch to the Birdshot podcast and sort of take over some of the behind the scenes stuff that comes along with doing podcasting. I wasn't necessarily doing that before. So it's been a little bit of a learning curve in some of those areas, but for the most part, I think the show has maintained a pretty constant thread of what it was and what it continues to be. And the feedback and the response from the listeners has been really, really good. So yeah, it's been a blast. I got 175 episodes out, which is that's not a ton of episodes if you compare that to like a show that has been out for like the same duration. I've probably averaged like over the life of the show like three episodes per month, and it's usually somewhere in that 3 to 4 range. But I sort of follow my curiosity and my education as an upland bird hunter and sort of a shotgun and bird hunting and bird dog enthusiast, and I just sort of follow that wherever it goes and the people I meet. And yeah, it's been a really, really cool way to interact with and interact with a lot of guests, and then connect with people that listen to the show. It's a blast, as you know, a lot of that stuff I know you're familiar with. Yeah,
absolutely. That's been, going into this, didn't know what fully to expect, and I think getting to meet people and what I get to learn from these conversations is so valuable, and being able to ask the questions and pick someone's brain on dogs or gear or hunting, whatever it might be. Like that's been a learning part for me. It's been super fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. What's been your biggest takeaway when you think back over the last 3.5, 4 years that you've been doing this? Like what's your biggest takeaway from doing the podcast, pretty much week in, week out?
Yeah, man, I would say just like the amount that there is to learn and get familiar with, before starting the podcast, I have been upland hunting, aka grouse hunting it was really grouse hunting for a long time. I've done more things now in the more recent years since getting bird dogs and stuff, but I was grouse hunting from the time I was, I say 10 years old, because that's about when I figured the first time I went. And obviously that was to varying levels of intensity, being a 10-year-old and having your options limited. But once I got my driver's license and gained that independence, then I started hunting a lot more, and you get a little bit more freedom. And again, I was doing it for a long time, but like the breadth and the depth of my knowledge, and I also didn't have bird dogs back then. So that's a big component of that has changed in my hunting now. It's just like my experience it was like an inch wide and kind of a mile deep, but really it's gotten way deeper now. And I really do think doing the podcast and talking to all of these people and like really intensely focusing on this world over the last 4 or 5 years it's just exposed me to a lot of things that I didn't know. And my education has come a long way. And yeah, I mean, that's selfishly, it's one of the coolest things about doing the podcast is just my continued education and learning all this stuff that I didn't know, and still kind of feel like you're just scratching the surface in a lot of areas, but that's really part of the fun.
Yeah, it just keeps going. The knowledge keeps going. You keep learning new
exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you think the fascination is with upland hunting podcasts out there, or just hunting podcasts? Maybe like I feel they've grown over the last 4 or 5 years. Like just there's so many new ones out there, and a lot of the ones that are still going that's kind of started this. What do you think I don't know, what's the fascination with?
I think like I look at it from I was a podcast fan and listener, maybe at an early stage. And like, it goes back to kind of like shortly after I graduated college and started working in an office. Like I was doing a lot of desk work, and I was able to, like, certain jobs, I was able to listen to things while I was working. And I really think that was the point where I sort of dove in, and there were no hunting podcasts back then, or at least no bird hunting podcasts this was like 2011, 2012. And for whatever reason, like whether or not this was always the case with podcasts, I really think it was a big part of it was they were so focused on learning. And like, it was a way to get exposure to topics. Obviously the audio format, I mean, if you just look at it from a mainstream perspective, clearly the audio format has just blown up, whether it's audio books or podcasts. It sets up well for today's crazy world and our modern society, where we feel like we don't have time for anything. And so we're always trying to, we have access to all this stuff. So I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because I'm always trying to like listen to podcasts while I'm mowing the lawn or doing stuff. And a lot of that stuff is great, but at the same time, like I'm thinking more lately about like, just like, I have this, a lot of times I have the content faucet just on all the time. I'm always trying to take advantage, and there's so much out there, and there's so much good, like you can never listen to all the cool stuff. And this goes beyond podcasting, or beyond upland podcasts, hunting podcasts. Like there's so many topics that I'm interested in, and I love the format, and clearly a lot of other people do. So I think we've seen this massive growth in the podcasting space in general. And one of the beauties of it, which is similar to a lot of other online or digital platforms, is that you, myself, anybody can really start up a podcast. The barrier to start a podcast, to use the technology and start self-publishing this stuff, is so low that it really is an opportunity that exists for basically anybody. And, with that, you get tons and tons of choices and tons of options, but you also get people like everybody can sort of carve out their little space and do things in their way, which is going to be interesting and attractive to some people, not everybody, but some people. And that's the cool thing. We have that choice as listeners or readers or whatever you want to call it. We have lots of choices, and we can kind of get drawn into the ones that we really, really like. And if you don't like one particular show, there's probably another one for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's so well said. Wow.
I thought about it a little bit.
No, I can tell. That sums it up very well. You get different flavors, you get different, niches of people doing waterfowl things, people doing upland.
Absolutely.
More, which is awesome. Yeah. It's funny.
And, I was just going to say, like, as much as like, I kind of like, I sort of think about my show as like, I even refer to it as like all things upland and stuff. Like, I mean, I've talked a lot about grouse and woodcock hunting on my show over the years, because that's what I have spent the bulk of my time doing. That's what I love to do, because it's my biggest opportunity. Sure. And, for a lot of people out there, that's really interesting, but there's lots of upland bird hunters where, it's going to be a little different flavor. And I try to mix it up because I want to reach out and I want to engage with other audiences. I want to learn about the things that I haven't done yet. Sure. But like when it comes to that really deep conversation and like really breaking stuff down, like, I can do that with grouse and woodcock, but I can't necessarily do that with hunting in Colorado like you could, Will.
Totally. Hunting in Colorado is so great. It's so great.
Yeah. I got to get out there.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. For sure. We got a lot of species. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Quantities, maybe. That's great. But I was going to say, that's kind of like with my show. Like I really love the Brittany. I love the Brittany. Yeah. And I always kind of have to like fight that urge to like, no, I want to learn more about the setters and more about the Vishlos and more about the Boykins. And that's fun though. Like once I dive into that kind of stuff, like that's fun to learn a new avenue that, again, I'm so focused on my breed. I love that breed. But once you kind of diversify, you get to learn this whole other world of, other things out there. And that's super fun.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, very cool, man. Great job with the podcast. Keep it up. You've kind of, I don't know, started it all. Do you know did yours come first or Tyler's?
No. So, so Ron Bain.
Oh, Ron, that's
the Honey Dog podcast. Like we got to, if we're going to refer to somebody as the OG, and who knows, maybe there's somebody out there that would consider themselves the OG even beyond Ron. But like, I remember like I was as I kind of alluded to, I was a podcast fan, and it got to a point where probably around 2015 or 16, after I got my dog and I was actually working for the Ruffed Grouse Society at that time, I was thinking like I might want to start a podcast, because there was basically one at the time that I was listening to, which was Ron Bain's The Honey Dog podcast. And so I thought about that for a couple of years, and I was listening to Ron, and like I was joking about this with somebody recently. Like I think there's a number of people out there that would recall that time period where you listen to Ron's show and you're just like counting the days until the next one would come out, because it was so cool at that time. There was a limited selection. Yeah. And then Tyler Webster of the Birds, Booze, and Butts podcast started formerly the Western Wing Shooter podcast like a month or two before I started mine. So like mine was kind of in the works. I was in the works, but I hadn't published anything. And Tyler must have started, I don't know, June, July, August of 2017.
So right around there.
Yeah. And I remember texting Tyler, like, because like then I was getting ready to launch mine, and of course I had a million questions about gear and setup and stuff. And I started texting Tyler, and had, that's the other cool thing. It's like you can just kind of reach out to people, and I think most people are in this space are like that, just because like literally it doesn't take much to become an upland podcaster.
Not that hard.
You're just another bird hunter, so you reach out to people, and most people are so like they're so quick to respond and engage with you. It's kind of cool, I guess. It's one of the cool things about it. And so I start texting Tyler, and I'm asking him about gear, and like, we've joked about it since, or like he was telling me what he was using, but he's like, I really had no business telling you what kind of gear you should be using. But yeah, so then I started awesome. in September of 2017, and now there's a new one every week, it seems like. But
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, keep it up. Yeah. And you touched on this a second ago. Let's dive into a little bit of your upbringing and your launch into upland hunting, grouse hunting. Take us through that a little bit, and when did the dogs finally come along for you, and kind of walk us through that.
Yeah. So growing up in northern Minnesota, I think I got my start grouse hunting similar to many people that grow up in this part of the world. I think I was around 10 years old or something. There might be a photo or something with a timestamp on it that I could confirm this at some point. But my dad he actually grew up in Western North Dakota. And he did some hunting when he was growing up out there. He would tell me about duck hunting, and I think some sharp tails and stuff. He wasn't an avid hunter. Like when he moved to Duluth, eventually, before I was born and everything, he wasn't really hunting. But my uncle, my mom's, their brother-in-law, he was a hunter. And so we had some connections, and they came up with the great ideas one day to take my uncle and my dad to take me and my cousin Chris out grouse hunting. And so we drove up, I don't know, an hour from home into the big tracts of public land here, down some forest roads. And we were walking trails that day. And I remember I have these like oddly like vivid memories of this, like my first day grouse hunting, at least as best I can recall them. And I remember at one point we were driving down this forest road, and a very, very common sight, like up the road, there's a ruffed grouse standing in the middle of the road. You see that on the forest roads around here. And I remember like my uncle stopped the car. My dad and my uncle excitedly were like, "That's what we're looking for. There's a grouse." I just remember peering up between the drivers and the passenger seat, looking up and seeing that bird. And like, it just was like that moment, like something took me about that bird, this cryptic little bird standing in the middle of the road. And there was some cool moments that day. I remember the first grouse flushed out of this, like from under this little balsam tree. And like anybody that's heard a ruffed grouse flush close by, they make quite a racket getting up, and it flew straight down the trail. And I remember my dad mounted his gun, and the bird kind of banked, and he didn't shoot. And I just remember, why didn't you shoot? It's like, now you realize like, the bird got out of there pretty quick. They're not the easiest bird to get a shot at. Yeah, exactly. And we didn't have dogs. We were just walking, logging roads and forest trails. And that is a way, that's a way that you can hunt grouse. And so to kind of like shorten the story, like that's basically what I did. Like I became fascinated with it that day. My dad would take me, like usually we'd go on Sundays. I have a lot of memories of like going up hunting because he worked on Saturdays, didn't work on Sunday. We'd drive up early in the morning. We'd go hunting, and like come like noon or 1, we'd be driving home listening to the Minnesota Vikings game on the radio. Like I can remember that. And like, I always wanted to go grouse hunting. And so he took me whenever I could. And then, like I said, when I got my license, then I started going on my own, and there were no bird dogs really involved in any of this. Okay. But as I alluded to, you can be a relatively successful ruffed grouse hunter simply by walking trails. Sure. And finding birds. And I learned a lot about grouse that way. I think I learned a lot about like the interaction between me and the bird, because without a dog like going on point or making game and flushing the bird for you, you've got to be really good about taking advantage of any little opportunity that you get, because you're already behind the 8 ball without that dog on the ground. Sure. And so like I learned a lot about sort of making moves on grouse. And like my biggest thing was I was trying to see the grouse before it flushed, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do. They stand still, and you can walk you can walk 5 feet away from them and they won't move and you'll miss them. But the way to combat that, if you're hunting without a dog, is to walk really as slow as you can. People will tell you to stop randomly, take pauses. And a lot of times when you stop, if you happen to stop near a bird, you stop frequently, the bird will flush. Sure. So again, like I didn't find nearly as many birds back then as I do now having dogs. But I think what that time period really helped me with was, again, the moment, like now today, if my dog is on point, when I'm walking in, like my eyes are scanning, I'm able to see lots of birds on the ground. And like some people will tell you, like, don't look for the bird on the ground, just keep your eyes on the horizon. I can't help myself. Yeah. Like for like 20 years, like my favorite thing to do was look like spot a grouse on the ground. So I still do that. And so that was a lot of fun. And then fast forward until I graduated college, lived in the cities, knew that I wanted to move back to Duluth. And that was around 2014. Before I moved back, I'd put a deposit down on a dog, which was my first bird dog, English setter named Hartley. He's 8 years old. Well, he'll be 8 years old in June. And we can talk about how I landed on English setters if you want. But I did that and then like still had to find a job and buy a house. Like it was this whole thing with my wife and I. We wanted to do it, but we didn't have that totally planned out. But it was like, okay, we have the deposit down. If I get a job in Duluth and we move back and I buy a house, then we can take the puppy. Otherwise, we were just gonna like kick that down the road a little bit. And anyways, long story short, found a job in Duluth, moved back in 2014, got the first bird dog. Nice. And that feels like kind of a long time ago now. Now I've got 2 of them, and it's a blast.
It's growing from there.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we'll touch on the setters in a little bit here. I really want to know kind of what led you to them. But thinking about like your experience in upland hunting, were there any barriers to entry getting into upland hunting, again, based on where you grew up and all that, like your age, anything, like, were there any barriers to entry? And like with that, like, what are some things you think that people face these days? Is it geographically where they live, whether their family hunted or didn't? Like, talk about your experience first. Like, were there any challenges that you had to kind of face as you were getting into hunting?
I don't really like, I think I used to say this a lot. Like I sort of had the easy way in, my dad exposed me to it. He took me like whenever he could, gave me an opportunity. Obviously I liked it and wanted to do it. And again, living where I live, we had access to birds. And like one of the other things that I jokingly say is like, if I had a barrier, it was before I had my driver's license. Like we were, like I was begging my mom to like drive us up to the gravel road or something. And like, man, I remember a grouse opener. I must have been in high school or something, like 9th or 10th grade. And we did this a few times where we would, and I was talking to Matt Davis about this because he did a similar thing with his mom where she would drop him off at the top of a canyon and wait for him at the bottom. And we did that where I remember opening day, like my dad dropped me off, I think on his way to work. He dropped me and a friend off at this, awesome. Like the middle of the woods at this forest road. And we went and hunted and one of our parents picked us up like midday, which like as I think about like
hilarious.
Doing that with my son or something today, it feels crazy, but I don't know, thanks to my parents, I guess, for
you
doing
have cool
that,
parents.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
pick you up later, son.
Exactly. I remember another day, like I wanted to go hunting so bad. I begged my mom to take me, and like my dad had the truck and we had a Toyota Camry, and my mom, we drove the Toyota Camry down this road and like we almost got stuck, but we didn't. I remember my mom being pretty nervous, but
awesome.
If I had a barrier, that was it, like not having that driver's license. But then as soon as I got that, we have access to public land here. And, to your point about like, what are the barriers today? I think that's a huge one for folks, would be not having access to wild birds. 10, 15 minutes here and I can be hunting on public land, wild birds. So that's a huge,
don't rub it in.
Barrier
Don't rub it
removed. Yeah, exactly. But I think about like a tool like Onyx Hunt. Mm-hmm. I mean, like when we were hunting back then, it used to be plat books. I never owned a plat book. Like we just, and the way that the rules are written up here in Minnesota is that if a piece of forested land is private but unposted, you can hunt it. Now, I think I very rarely hunted private land, even though the rules are written that way. I think most of the time we were hunting on public land, but to find covers back then, like we were just driving around and anywhere that looked halfway decent that didn't have a no trespassing sign, we were hunting. But I didn't know, I wasn't connecting all the dots like you can with Onyx Hunt, like knowing, this is a piece of county land, or this is state land, or this is federal forest, like all the information that we have today. And I mean, that's not even getting into like timber harvest and cut and forestry data. I mean, all that stuff I use today, and it makes me a way better and more efficient hunter. So there's no shortage of information, and the podcast included, folks can kind of learn about things a lot easier. But I think location is a big one. And then just because you have information to go do something doesn't mean that you still have to get over that feeling of uncomfortability. Like you get out of your comfort zone, you're not confident in hunting or shooting, or you're not confident in what you're doing. I'm sort of doing that with turkey hunting right now. Like I'm in my 4th year of turkey hunting, but I don't have a ton of time doing it. And so I'm out of my comfort zone. It's totally different feeling than like my ruffed grouse hunting. And man, it's really helpful if you've got a friend, AKA a mentor, a buddy or somebody that can kind of help you through all those little micro decisions that you have to make when you're new to something. So I would think those two things would be the toughest, but they're not neither of those are insurmountable, right? Sure.
Absolutely. They're easy to overcome. You just got to put a little effort in and make a couple asks, and someone tells you no, it's okay. Ask someone else.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You got to want it. Yeah. I mean, think of the ability we have to connect with other people too. It's way easier to find upland bird hunters.
I mean, all these people with whether it's Instagram accounts or whatever, social media in itself has given us the option to reach out to someone, and it takes the willingness of that person to reach out and be like, hey, Nick, hey, Will, whoever it is, what pointers can you give me? Whatever it might be.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole art and nuance to that, asking the right questions and bringing the right attitude to the table. I mean, we could go on and on about that stuff, but it's interesting. I think about like how all of the different things we could be doing, activities and stuff right now. And like, upland bird hunting is such a tiny little drop in the bucket compared to like everything else that people in 2022 are thinking about. But there's no doubt there's lots of attention on it, and folks are finding it every day and starting hunting every year.
Absolutely. So one of the things you mentioned a little bit ago was about like timber cut and timber harvest on a basic level. Can you just talk about when it comes to grouse hunting in the north, or the north up north? Like what does that do for the birds, and like how can you use that to your advantage when you're hunting birds up there?
So good question. I just actually was at I was at Piners Grouse Camp over the weekend, which is it's a hunting outfit nearby. A friend of mine, Jerry Havel, owns it, and we had a little weekend there in conjunction with Onyx Hunt. Ben Bredigan was there, and we were doing some educational stuff, and we were looking at maps, and along with maps, we were talking a lot about forestry data and timber harvest and cuts. Nice. And so when it comes to ruffed grouse, and woodcock for that matter. Probably the umbrella term that would encapsulate what we're oftentimes talking about would be early successional habitat, which is young forests or younger forests. And that term can mean a lot of different things. And early successional forests exists all over the place, but we are typically talking about a specific type of early successional forest. But in the Upper Great Lakes, we're often, as ruffed grouse and woodcock hunters, we're often talking about aspen forests, but it doesn't have to be aspen. And that especially is true in other areas of the country where aspen isn't such a predominant species type. You might have young oak forests or young maple forests or any other kind of thing. And a lot of times what the birds need it's the stem density and the structural component that a young forest would provide beyond it being just an aspen tree or something. So
density, talking like a lot of young trees together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. So high stem density, and what the wild biologists use a term called structural diversity, which is not necessarily just like they want to see, and what I want to see as a grouse hunter, not just a bunch of trees shooting straight up out of the ground, but if I got horizontal stuff and structural diversity, because what that does is it's good nesting and brooding cover for the birds. It's where they grow up, and it makes it hard for predators to get through. And so if you've got a lot of stems coming up out of the ground, that's going to make it hard for a fox or a coyote or something to get through those stems. And then then avian predators are a big one for ruffed grouse. So if you've got horizontal branches and stems and
more cover for them.
Exactly. It's going to make it hard for them to get through too. So I think that's one of the main, obviously there's food sources. You need food and cover when it comes to birds, but there's food in and around these places, but it's protective cover for ruffed grouse. And so we as grouse hunters are often seeking out those young aspen forests, and a common age you'll hear is 10-year-old aspen. That is a relative term because a 10-year-old aspen stand in even one part of Minnesota is not always the same as a 10-year-old aspen stand in another part of Minnesota. A lot of that has to do with soil quality and like soil makeup, which would make a 10-year-old aspen stand what it is. And so you're kind of looking at stem density and that like stand composition. And once you have an eye for it, it's pretty, you know what you're looking for. It doesn't really matter how old it is, but yeah.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. So what would make a young forest though better or different from an older forest? Wouldn't an older forest have a lot of those characteristic, the horizontal stuff and all that?
Yep. So good question. And I'm going off fresh information here. Like I know this.
This is perfect. This was not planned either.
Yeah. I just heard my friend Bailey Peterson. She's a wildlife. I don't know if she's a wildlife biologist. She's a wildlife manager, I think, for the Minnesota DNR up here. Okay. She's a big grouse hunter, and I talk to her a lot. And she just gave a presentation on this the other day. But so the cool thing about aspen, they are a root suckering species. So when you cut an aspen stand, say a 40 or 50-year-old, like out my window here, I've got like 40 or 50-year-old aspen. I can count like 1, 2, 3. I can see 3 or 4 aspen trunks, big trunks, and if we were to come in and cut those and expose the ground to soil, that the aspen they're all interconnected under the ground. There's one interconnected root system. And so when you cut the mature trees, the root suckers shoot out of the ground like crazy. And it's not 3 or 4, it's like 400 stems that are, the numbers are crazy. Okay. But so they start coming out, they shoot out of the ground, and that's where they create this lot of stem density, high stem count in an area. And then as the aspen trees grow, what they do, like this is how the aspen tree evolved. They're all racing upwards to get the sunlight. And as certain trees like become, I can't remember if the aspen trees just cut off certain stems or if like other stems just become healthier, but it's a self-thinning process where as the stand ages and the trees grow, you'll be walking through a grouse cover of say 8, 9, 10-year-old aspen, and you just you lean on an aspen tree to sort of push it out of your way, and it'll just fall over.
Really?
And that stem has been cut off from the root system under the ground. And so it's a survival of the fittest thing. And so only the strong trees remain, and it self thins. And so as that aspen stand ages, it thins out in stem density, offering less protection.
That is
which I think
fascinating.
kind of answers your question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah. So first example you gave, just to recap. So like you take an older tree, you cut that older tree. When that's the ground and the soil is more exposed, then more trees are going to grow, basically.
Correct. Yep. You cut the head off the snake. Basically, you cut one aspen tree down, and 100 are going to pop out of the ground. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So that's why you hear guys up north saying, "Oh, cut the trees," and they're probably referring to the older trees, older forest.
Exactly. It's regenerating forest. You're creating openings. A lot of it, it's like, I think about sunlight a lot. It has to do with sunlight. You cut down a stand of trees, and it's all like you could do a whole podcast about like timber markets and the reason we're regenerating forests, and there's marketable product in the wood, and ruffed grouse as a species benefit from that. So they're sort of coexisting, and there are certain things you can do to tailor forest regeneration and timber harvesting to meet the needs of wildlife, ruffed grouse included. Lots of species need young forest habitat, which is a good thing because, as you know, like us upland bird hunters, we're a small group. So we only have so much like swaying power, but together there's lots of people and groups and interests in young forest habitat. So that helps, but yeah, it's a necessary component to like regenerating forests and keeping them good high quality habitat for ruffed grouse and a whole host of other species.
I guess where you live, is that the DNR's job to manage that forest cutting, or is that a whole bigger
it varies? Yeah, it varies because there's lots of property ownership. So we have, typically, if we're talking public land, we've got county owned lands, state owned lands, and then federal, aka your national forest. There's active timber harvesting going on all three of those property types to varying extents. The DNR is going to run their program, the feds are going to run their program, and then the counties are running their program. The way it typically works is, let's just take county. Counties tend to cut the most timber. They are in like, don't quote me on this, but I feel like my sense is like they're like timber revenue from timber harvest is a big part of a lot of county budgets. So they have an incentive to harvest timber, and it works well in the sense that you tend to find lots of good grouse cover on county lands because they harvest a lot of timber. Sure. Less so on state lands, and even less so on federal forest, national forest. And there's a lot of reasons why that sort of arc exists. But yeah, so you typically, a county will say, all right, I've got this 160 acres here. We want to cut this. And they will put it up for auction. And then loggers, private logging companies will bid on sale. And they'll come in and say, all right, you got 160 acres of 40-year-old aspen. The market is this. I think I can make this. I will pay you, the county, this amount to go in and take care of it for you. We'll take the trees out of there. And then the logging crew takes and sells the timber. And obviously there's some margin involved in there. And that's a complex system. So it's a very simplified way of explaining.
No, I appreciate that. I'm sure the listeners will as well. Last question on this. I know we went kind of deep into this. When you're talking about, let's say 160 acre section, someone wants to cut the trees. Are they cutting everything flat, or are you going in and cutting a couple trees here, a couple trees there? Do you know?
Great question. And the short answer would be, it depends. There are varying ways to think about that. Like if you were strictly motivated by profit, you would go in and you would cut down every single tree that wasn't dead or decaying, and you would take that right off the landscape and sell it. That's not really what that would be like one end of the extreme. Okay. the other end of the extreme would be you take a tree here and a tree there and try to leave most of the woods standing and untouched. Okay. That's not what happens either. The reality is somewhere in the middle. And okay. What you're trying to do is maximize profit for, I guess it depends. It would depend. Like a county is probably going to try to be maximizing profit, but they are most counties that at least that I hunt and I'm familiar with, like profit is not like the end all be all. That's not the main motivator. Okay. There are things that the foresters that would walk in and set up the timber sale. There are things that my friend Bailey Peterson would do as a wildlife manager to sort of consult and collaborate.
Because they would speak from the, the bird hunting aspect. Like we need to keep some.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And there, that's where the NGOs come in. It's like, how can we, and this is where progress happens. This is where good things happen, is when the industry of timber markets meets wildlife conservation and sustainable resource management. I mean, it's that you could very, very much sum it up in that. So where is that balance where we all win? And I think one of the reasons why we have been able to maintain good quality hunting is that the markets have been able to sell this renewable resource. We are doing it in a way that puts and keeps good habitat on the ground, and we've got the cycle and everything down, but there's a lot of thought and a lot of process that goes into how you would set up a timber sale. And I've got friends that are foresters, and those are fun conversations to have sitting around the campfire for sure. I bet.
Is because you worked for RGS. Is RGS pretty involved in some of that, do you think? Or
yes, they're
as far as a consulting maybe in some of the
exactly. Yep. So I spent a couple years working for the Ruffed Grouse Society. I've volunteered for our local chapter and stuff. And they're very much, they're a relatively small organization with members in a lot of states. So they really play a role of like advocating for ruffed grouse and woodcock hunting, and where are the win-wins, and isolating and identifying those opportunities to, keep timber markets and that renewable resource churning, like that side of things, while having ruffed grouse and woodcock habitat in mind. So that's one of the roles that they play. And I did want to say that, like, the more and more I've learned, like the aspen tree and the aspen, they call it a clone, like this one living organism under the ground that shoots up all these stems. Like I want to say, like, an aspen clone, one living organism, is like one of the oldest living organisms in the world. I could be wrong. There's something like really sort of unique and magnificent about an aspen clone that I think is in Colorado.
I've heard of this a little to some degree. I've heard of this. Yes, this the underground.
We might have
thing.
To fact check this one.
Someone please do it, because I don't have time right now. But someone please fact check us, because that is pretty fascinating. The aspens here are they're, and because they thrive better, from what I've understood, in those groups, those families. So a lot of people here in Colorado, they'll take an aspen tree and try to plant it in their backyard, just one aspen tree. And a lot of them don't succeed because I've heard they need kind of like those trees, the root system of the other aspens to thrive. And we actually just had an aspen. It was here when we moved here, but we had an aspen tree. It just died. It was one lone aspen planted, and someone was like, "Oh yeah."
See, if you would have cut that, you might have resprung that clone.
Yes, I was thinking that as you were talking. I was like, I wonder.
Yeah. I recall I was turkey hunting. Like, most people don't plant aspen trees around here because we have so many of them. But it very much is that. I recall I was turkey hunting a few years ago it was a southern part of Wisconsin, where there are aspen trees, and there were some there, but they weren't there. They're becoming less and less. Like, it's in the forest succession timeline, aspen is one of those early successional species. If you just leave it alone, which, like, this is what would have happened pre-European settlement before we were here. If you just leave an aspen stand alone and no disturbance ever comes, AKA a tornado or a fire, wildfires were a huge creator of early successional forests throughout time. If you just leave it, that aspen stand will eventually, all those trees will eventually die and decay and fall over. And then I think the clone is dead at that point, and they're usually taken over by some species type that would be a later successional forest species, which maple is the one that comes to mind. They're like a later stage successional. They have, as you probably know, they have a huge canopy. They shade out a lot of stuff underneath, and they kind of like choke off the forest floor underneath. And the only thing that gets rid of that maple stand is basically a wildfire that comes in there and rips through, and then you might have aspen suckers coming out again.
Right. Dude, that's wow. I did not expect to go that deep into forestry and tree cutting.
That's my armchair biologist / forester conversation.
Hey,
there.
I mean, you sound like you know what you're talking about, so that's good.
I've got good sources, I will say that. But if I said anything wrong, I'm sure they'll let me know.
Someone will let us know.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into your dogs, man.
Yeah.
These two great looking setters you have. So Hartley's 8, you said, and then how old is
he'll
Rose?
be 8 in June. Rose turned 2 yesterday. Actually,
that's right. I saw that. Oh, happy birthday, Rose.
Yeah. And they're actually half siblings. They've got the same sire.
That's right.
So they're out of the same kennel.
That's right. Yeah, you get them from a guy in Wisconsin or Minnesota?
Minnesota. Yep. Close to the Wisconsin border. So another one for you there. Well, Jerry Coulter, Northwoods Bird Dogs. He's a very well-known breeder of English setters in this part of the world. He's been around for a long time, been breeding dogs for a long time. Definitely breeds English setters and pointers for the ruffed grouse and woodcock hunter, but really for the upland bird foot hunter is kind of what he would how you would describe his kennel. And yeah, I guess I don't know if this is your question, but I was going to kind of go into how I stumbled on.
Go for it. Yeah, go there.
So kind of like going back to when I was moving to Duluth, and I've told this story before, obviously, but growing up, I always thought I knew I wanted a hunting dog someday, and I always thought it was going to be a German Shorthair because I remember German Shorthair was like the dog that I saw like on ESPN Outdoors.
Sure.
As I was watching that as a kid, like a roan, liver and roan colored Shorthair with an orange collar. Like that was what always came to mind. And actually one of my good buddies, he got a dog before I got mine. He had a Shorthair Stella. And that was one of the first dogs that I really started hunting over regularly, and I have fond memories of Stella. So it's nothing against Stella, that's for sure. But when I was going to get a dog, I think I started just kind of Googling grouse and woodcock dogs. And I just very quickly stumbled across an article, and it was an article about Jerry and his kennel, and kind of was like, hey, he's breeding dogs for the grouse and woodcock hunter. And I went to his website and saw pictures of these beautiful dogs, and it really became a pretty short story after that. I just called Jerry, talked to him, kind of told him my situation I was in, first looking for my first dog. And I pretty much hunt ruffed grouse, and that's what I want to do. And he said, come on up and check out the kennel. And I remember my wife and I went there and we met the dogs, and, that's the only kennel I went to. After we met those dogs, we were pretty much hooked. And I mean, that maybe would have happened at another kennel too, but that was about all I needed to say. I will say, I remember we walked in, and when we got there, there's a kennel full of dogs, and they kind of started barking and howling and stuff. And Jerry came out and met us, and we walked in. And when we walked in, all the dogs calmed down. And I remember looking over at the first kennel run, I think, and there was this beautiful English setter just sitting there, just, calm, collected, just kind of super relaxed, mellow. And it ended up being Hartley's dad. And this was a dog named Grits. And I just was like, sort of was like taken aback by like how cool and calm this dog was. Yeah. And then you read about him on the website, and he's a phenomenal bird hunting dog. And yeah, that's just kind of what I remember from that day. And we put down a deposit. We wanted a female dog, and we ended up, there was a small litter. There was only one female, and we had the second pick. And so Jerry kind of talked to me about like why I wanted a female, and I didn't really have a strong reason to do so. So I ended up with Hartley, and that was dog number one. Had a great start with him. I had lots to learn, obviously.
Sure. First dog.
And, yeah, exactly. So all of those trials and tribulations. And when the time came for dog number 2 a few years back, there was like really no doubt that I was going to go back to Jerry, and it ended up being a breeding that included Grits, that same sire, and different dams. So Rose got a little bit different blood on on her other side. But yeah, I just I love my dogs, obviously, as most of us do. But
100%.
They have taught me so much. It's been so much fun.
But when you think of grouse hunting, is it when you the first thing that pops in your mind, like, are you thinking of that setter on point in the grouse woods for you? Is that what I would say
today I do, but I didn't have those visions or illusions at that time. I've heard people say that, and you read in the old books, and don't get me wrong, I read some of the old books and stuff, but I didn't pay that much attention to the dogs where I never said before I stumbled across Northwoods bird dogs, I never had it in my head that I was going to get an English setter. It just wasn't. So
you never had a correlation going into it, grouse hunting and setters go together.
Exactly. That was not the case for me. It has become that because it's now it's everything affirms that bias for me.
Sure.
But no, I didn't have that. And I mean, I know where it comes from, and now I pay more attention to it as I read. And I actually just finished rereading New England Grouse Hunting this morning.
Nice.
Paging my way through that over the last couple of weeks, and that's absolutely one of the classics. But so now setters go hand in hand with grouse hunting, but that wasn't always the case.
Yeah, there's something classy about that for sure. Those beautiful white dogs and their tails, and
I will say I love having a white dog in the grouse woods. I mean, that's you can get by with obviously all sorts of different kinds of dogs, but I certainly appreciate the white dogs in the woods. It definitely helps with the visuals, and until it snows, and maybe that's why I hate hunting in the snow so much.
Right. Well, your season does it go pretty far into the season?
It goes to December. Well, usually right around the new year. So,
okay. Oh yeah. So you probably definitely have snow.
Yeah. So we always get snow pretty much every year. The last couple of years we've been fortunate in that, I say the hunting stays good to great as long as there's not more than a couple inches on the ground. Okay. It's a little bit different. When there's no snow on the ground, as late as into the year as that goes, the hunting conditions are at peak. They're awesome. The hunting is really, really good. And part of that is because if the forest floor doesn't have full coverage, there are usually some kind of green leafy vegetation that the birds will be eating. And so I feel that the birds tend to stay more spread out and evenly distributed across the forest as long as that holds true. But as soon as you get a significant level of snow and that green leafy vegetation is gone on the forest floor, I feel like that's when they start to congregate more on certain winter food sources. Okay. And then it kind of becomes you'll read about late season rough grouse hunting. It's kind of this boom or bust. You might walk a lot and not see anything, but then you might blow out 10 of them out of a certain area because they're all keyed in on these food sources.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang. I have to get up and do some grouse hunting, man. It sounds so fun.
You'd love it.
It does sound so fun. What, how's Hartley's knee doing? I know ACL surgery, right? Last year?
Yes. Yeah. So we did, TPLO, surgery New Year's Eve of would have been 2021.
Okay. So this past December.
Year before. Not the most recent December of the year before.
Oh, okay.
So it was New Year's Eve 2020 actually.
Gotcha.
The January 1st, 2021 is when he was recovering from surgery. Yeah. So over a year ago he had surgery, and this goes back to, in hindsight, I now know that he had a partial torn ACL a few years ago. Okay. And I noticed in the hunting season of 2019 that he, after strenuous exercise or a hunt, I should say, he was slow to get up out of his kennel. And, first bird dog, I don't know. He's 6 years old. He's getting older, all those questions in my mind. Sure. Right. And anyways, so then we hit the off season and I noticed that this problem continued, but it was less apparent because it was not hunting season and we were just kind of doing our maintenance exercise. And if we went for a real strenuous run or a long run or something, he would be kind of slow going up the stairs. Again, I had my vet look at it at one point and it wasn't significant enough for them to examine it any further. Well, then in the hunting season of 2020, we started ramping up our training right before the season. And I noticed the problem was kind of getting worse. And then I remember we had Ruffed Grouse opener, and the recovery post run was degrading. He was, so I knew something was, and I think in the back of my mind, I was kind of thinking this way. Again, first dog, never been through this, have no idea, but I had heard about it a little bit.
Sure.
And then we went out to North Dakota, and the first run we had out in North Dakota, the first day we were there, he came back to the truck and his back leg he tucked it totally up. It was totally lame. And so that at that point it was like, he's done hunting, and I was in camp and we were talking to people and talking all about ACL and all that kind of stuff. And we got back home, and they diagnosed it. He fully tore it at that point.
Okay.
So then New Year's, I finished that season. Hartley never hunted again during that fall.
Rose was really young, right?
That was when I had Rose, and she was like 3 months old. Yeah, she was like 3 months old in September. So I quickly became a bird hunter with just a puppy. And I mean, looking back, like, we had a lot of fun. I was able to get through October and stuff hunting with my friends and their dogs. And I was taking Rose out every chance I could. We'd go for, it was basically a puppy walk,
Sure.
We're just like whatever she could handle, 30, 45 minutes going out for a walk. And that's one of the advantages that I've got living where I live. I don't have to make a trip to go hunting somewhere. I can go out for the afternoon and I can be home that evening. So that helped me a lot. Rose hunted a ton. That was one of those years we had a really good late season. So I was hunting Rose all the way through late December. And by that time she was close to 6 months old. So her, physical capabilities and like the bird exposure she got in year number 1 was fantastic. And we just finished her second season. But going back to Hartley, he did the TPLO surgery, and we did that on New Year's Eve. So we had all season or all year last year to recover before hunting season. And the surgery went great. The recovery was great. And he does have some arthritis in his right hip. Okay. And now, like, the vets actually pointed that out when we first diagnosed the torn cruciate ligament, or ACL, as we often refer to it. And so we now kind of just sort of think that he had some arthritis in his right hip. For whatever reason, that maybe caused some overcompensation on his left side.
Okay.
That's where he tore it on the left side.
Oh,
we fixed the left side. That surgery went great. I did a bunch of research on who to have that surgery done. I consulted with some vets that I knew from the podcast, sure. And they kind of all recommended this one person. So he did a phenomenal job. The surgery leg recovered, I would say 100% entirely. He still has that bit of arthritis in his right.
And the other one,
he doesn't have the full extension and stride that he once did, and that like Rose did. So he kind of has a little bit more of a pace to him.
Okay.
But long story short, he hunted last season, and I finally had both dogs back in action.
That's
and
good.
What Hartley's got going for him is six or seven seasons of experience. Sure. And he makes the most of his con. He doesn't cover as much ground as Rose. He's not as fast, but he's got a lot of experience and a lot of bird savviness. And it was fun to watch him hunt again this fall.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Have you gotten both your dogs outside of the grouse woods, like to some of the grasslands and prairies and stuff as well?
Yeah. We've done, so for 4 years now, I've done a Western trip, started doing that with just Hartley and some friends. And now Rose has been out there twice. That first year, she didn't really hunt because she was so young when she was out there. But that's become like probably one of my most anticipated trips. It comes in September, so it's at the start of hunting season. And I just absolutely love going out there that time of year, getting to see the dogs run in the open country, watch them work the hills and work those early season sharptails. It is so much fun.
So I haven't grouse hunted, so I don't know the contrast and the difference, but it's gotta be such a different experience being in the tight woods versus that open prairie.
Yes. And especially the grouse woods undergoes like a huge makeover throughout the season, because when the season opens, it's still, for all intents and purposes, full foliage. Aside from a little bit of timing things and depending on what's going on. the grasses are up, the leaves are on the trees. It's green, it's thick, it's hot, it's buggy, it's humid. Like it's really not the most fun place to be. But like I won't be missing early season grouse hunting or grouse opener for any reason other than being out west. But like give me a chance to get out west and go walk that country and run the dogs out there. It's kind of like a great way to kick off the season.
Oh,
and
100%.
then I come back here and then I think part of what makes rough grouse hunting around here so cool is the way the woods does transform as the temperature cools, the frost starts coming, the grass dies, the leaves fall, the woods open up, the birds spread out. Like there's just this whole kind of like the way the season plays out. A lot changes from, your first hunt of the year, September 15th, to your last hunt of the year, which for me last year was December 26th. That was my last hunt.
Sure. It's a sad day.
Yes, definitely a sad day. Yeah, it is.
Oh my gosh. Well, dude, this has been super fun. We do some time constraints on my end. I got to start wrapping this up, but I foresee another episode in our future. if you do, I definitely would love to get more into shotguns, Upland Gun Company, all that cool stuff you got going on. But so one of the ways I love to wrap up is thinking about the rookie out there, rookie Uplander, someone who maybe this spring got their first bird dog. Maybe they're really getting excited to get after it this year. What's some advice that you would give someone out there going into their first season?
Yeah, obviously, excellent question. I mean, certainly take advantage of some of the tools we talked about. I mean, you've got the ability to arm yourself with a lot of information. And I know that can be a slippery slope for especially like my personality type. Like I can definitely suffer from analysis paralysis. So like, don't let that become a hindrance, but take some time, plan, prepare, map out where you want to go, get on Onyx and find a spot that you want to go hunt. And don't just have one spot, have 3 or 4 or 5, make sure you have a plan A or B, because what you want to avoid are these little speed bumps that can totally derail you. And I think,
that's so good.
you can translate that into like anything in life, but do some preparation ahead of time. And, when it comes to gear and where you're going to go and that kind of thing, again, to be able to overcome those little speed bumps and keep moving ahead, and don't get discouraged. I mean, it's super easy to do. Like you go out and just keep those expectations in check. If you go out somewhere and you don't find birds, just make sure you go again, like take a minute to reset and go again. And then the other thing I will say in conjunction with that is, everybody says this and we talk about how easy it is. And I know it's not easy, but try to find somebody, like I won't even use the word mentor because that's kind of like gets overused, but like find an accountability partner, a buddy, a friend, somebody that you're committed to with, because then if you get discouraged, that other person might be able to keep you going. And again, try to avoid those pitfalls or those things that might derail you with a good buddy.
That's so good. That's the gold nugget, man. That's the gold nugget of this episode.
I've been there. So
someone needs to rewind that and listen to that twice. Do it, because that's important, especially heading into your first season.
Yeah.
Well, dude, last thing I want to do is a rapid fire section. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Just give me kind of your off the cuff answer, and then we'll wrap things up. All right.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay. First gun you ever bought. What was it?
Oh, first gun that I ever bought. It was
shotgun.
First shotgun that I bought, I think would be a Browning BPS 12 gauge pump. My first grouse hunting gun was a Remington 870 Express. My parents bought that for me after I circled it in the Gander Mountain at 1,000 times. But then I think at some point I decided I need a 12 gauge. I'm not just starting out anymore. I need a 12 gauge. So I got a Browning BPS 12 gauge. Man. And I did a little duck hunting with that. I shot a lot of grouse with that.
Yep.
Or partridge, I should say. But
12 gauge will make you a real hunter.
Exactly.
Okay. What gun are you carrying out into the field now and why?
So right now I've got last year I carried almost every day an Upland Gun Company RFM Italian made side-by-side 20 gauge. Love that gun. I am totally smitten with side-by-sides. I got bit by that bug a few years ago, and I'm definitely off the deep end. As anybody that listens to my show will know. Love the weight. It's about 5.75 pounds. 5.75 pounds, very well balanced, 20 gauge, do all you need it to do.
That's perfect.
It fits me really well. I shoot it really well. There's no other gun that I want to pick up more than that.
That's awesome. Most clay targets you've hit in a row? No lying.
It's got to be less than 10. It's got to
Really?
be less than 10.
Really?
Yes, I don't like. I didn't grow up shooting a lot of targets. I did see this. I saw this question on the outline, and I laughed about it because, like,
I was thinking you were gonna say like 100 or something, man. Come on,
no, and that's the thing. Like, I think I can count on one hand the amount of rounds of skeet I've shot, where maybe you shoot like 23, 24 in a row or something.
Sure.
I rarely have shot skeet. We have a really good sporting clays range here, so I've done some of that. I'm not a super proficient clay target shooter, so I haven't done 50 straight or anything.
That surprised me.
Yeah.
Okay. A couple more here. Favorite breed of dog besides the one you own, besides the setter?
Man, that's a good question. You know what? I want to say, like, I don't even know. Yes, I have. I always forget this. I want to say I haven't hunted with a Brittany, but I like Brittany's. And it's gonna sound like I'm saying that because I'm on the show. Come on. I think I'm just kind of prone to, like, I like their color scheme. They can be white, and I love the orange. My little Rose, she's orange and white. I haven't done enough grouse hunting over Brittany's, but for some reason I like Brittany's.
Nick, come on.
I know.
Let's work this out. Let's
here.
work this out. Come on, I'll bring the Brits up. We'll hunt some grouse in the woods, man.
Yeah.
Whew, that just made my day. Favorite bird to hunt and why? You got 30 seconds on this.
I have to say the ruffed grouse. It's so easy for me. It's right from day one. The ruffed grouse has pulled me into this world. It's continued me driving into it. It's been at the center of my passion. I love hunting the ruffed grouse. I do it more than anything, and I hope to do it for a long, long time.
All right. 2 more questions. I'm going to try really quick. I'm going to try a new question on you. I've never tried this one on anyone. Open to interpretation. What came first for you? The dog, the gun, or the bird?
The bird. The bird. And it goes back to that story. It goes back to that story that I told about my dad and my uncle taking me hunting and pointing up the road at that ruffed grouse. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Like, there was something about that bird on that day in that place that captured my attention in a way that it started me on this path. And it was absolutely the ruffed grouse and that bird that pulled me in.
That's awesome. And then beverage of choice after a hunt, quickly.
Some kind of light beer. I'm not really that picky. I used to love drinking Ham's Light because you could get it in a 30 pack, but they discontinued it now. So I'm a Coors Light guy. I like Coors Light.
Coors all the way. Rocky Mountains, baby.
Yes, sir,
all right.
buddy.
Everyone out there, I'm sorry. Zoom is being dumb. It's counting us down again. I do have to go. I
jinxed you. Sorry, buddy.
This has been so fun, Nick. Thank you for your time, and good luck with the podcast. And it's been so much fun talking with you.
It was a pleasure, Will. Thanks for the opportunity. Let's keep in touch, buddy.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And go Avs.
Go Avs. Yes.
See you, buddy.
Take care. All right, that's a wrap of episode 43. Thanks so much for tuning in, and sorry for the abrupt ending. Zoom was being super dumb, and I thought I was on a free plan and was counting me down and was going to end the recording. I also had to get my son to hockey, and so the perfect storm. Just kind of had to rush things at the end. Nick, I'm sorry. Thanks for hanging in with me and rolling with the punches. So also, Nick, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for sitting down with me and just sharing some of your wisdom, some of your story. I always love getting to know people more. And so anyways, guys, remember, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're getting all the latest episodes. Leave a rating and review if you can on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You know it's going to help the show grow and get out there to more hunters just like you. Hey, remember, put some miles on those boots and follow your favorite bird dog. Until next time, take care.